Thank you. That's a great solution. Thank you.
Okay, so as a reminder to everybody, we just decided this. We are recording this meeting. Let me go ahead and I'm going to mute everybody. You can unmute yourselves as needed. If you're on the phone, as a reminder, *6 unmutes you. Okay, so good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's having a great day. I'd like to introduce, well, you know me, I'd like to introduce myself and Adam, Zeb Feldman, SEMA OE3 business rep, and we have a couple of board members on the call as well. Adam, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure, this is Adam Cole, your other SEMA business rep.
And I see Mary Beth, you are on the call. Do you want to unmute yourself and introduce, please?
That's right, you muted us. Started talking with unmute. Hi, I'm Mary Beth Rogers. I work in DFCS. I am the most recently elected member at large on the SEMA Executive Board. Welcome, everyone.
Great, thank you. And I do not see, are you there, Robin? If you're there, unmute yourself. I don't see you listed.
I don't see her.
Nope, I don't see her yet. Usually she attends these like clockwork, so maybe she'll be a moment late. Okay, well, we have a pretty full, I think what will be a full agenda here. This is being recorded. We did have a request to reorder things because a couple of people have to go to another meeting. I think one other person just texted me in chat. I'm putting the agenda here. So I'm going to lead with the SSA specific items, and then we'll move on to vaccine updates, budgetary outlook, South Bay Labor Council, navigating equal opportunity. I think that's going to be an important one to many people. SEMA COVID compliance issues. That's more county-wide, but this specifically rose from some SSPMs and OMCs in SSA. Okay, well, Adam, since I just reordered it, I'm going to go ahead and cover the SSA things, and then you can hit the vaccine updates. How's that sound?
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay. So welcome, everybody. As a reminder, you can unmute yourself. We have fewer than 50 people, so you can unmute yourself and ask questions or post it in chat at any time during the meeting. If there's something that you'd like to ask the business reps individually, unless it's confidential, please share with everybody. So that way we're not referring to a question that no one else has seen. If it is confidential, go ahead and email one of us or text one of us rather through the in-app chat, and we'll keep that confidential if it's a question about a manager or something. Okay, so the first item are 2 ongoing SSA meet and confers. And actually there are 3 because this leads into the next item, which is PAGC. And that is a spec revision. So here are the 3 ongoing meet and confers. There's one over the DFCS Reorg, which is a little more involved, and I'll touch on in a moment. Then there's a 360 review. Many people, several people on this call are intimately involved in that. And then there's a public guardian, public administrator, guardian conservator job specification change that the impacted codes have been emailed about. So let me start off with the largest one, which is the DFCS Reorg. DFCS, as you know, some of you know, especially if you're in the department, know, underwent a reorg about 2.5 years ago. And that was when Francesca was here as the head of DFCS, still under Robert Menicucci. And now they are again going through a reorg to address some systemic issues that management claims they were having in service delivery, as well as some of the voluntary separation incentive program retirements or VISIP hits, which is also creating some rejiggering in the department. So that meeting is ongoing. We have received, we meaning the DFCS folks, should have received an email with the latest proposal from the county. I am awaiting a follow-up date from Mona and Jeff Gaskill from Labor Relations. So we have met officially once, unofficially twice with the county to discuss this. There are no changes as yet. So if you're someone who you're worried is being impacted by it, or you think, oh, wow, I hear there's a new org chart, or I saw the new org chart and I'm concerned about it, that's why we're having the follow-up meeting. So no changes have occurred as yet. While there may be rumors, and I know a few people have emailed me privately and said, hey, I really like the reorg. And a few people have emailed me privately and said, I have the following concerns about the reorg. So SEMA has not yet agreed to anything with regards to the reorganization. I will post when I get a breath here, and we're talking about vaccine updates, the latest that came from the county, in case there are folks on the call that for whatever reason did not receive the email. Mary Beth, do you want to add any more on that, on the email distribution or on your participation in the meetings?
No, yeah, just that we know that at that one meeting, there were folks there that shouldn't have been. And I have updated everybody who sends out anything regarding to the reorg. They have the most recent SEMA DFCS list. So.
Zeb, will we get an opportunity to come back with our own proposal, with the counter proposal, once we meet with the county again? Because the updated reorg that they sent us, the proposal, is very different from the first one. That's one question. The other question is that reorg continues to be contingent upon whether or not they're going to get those codes filled. And I really would like to see a proposal that includes, in the event that they don't get those codes filled, because they still haven't received approval to fill 2 of the supervisor codes or to fill the SSPM2 code.
Okay, so those were 2 different questions, or question and a comment. So to your first question, absolutely, we will have an opportunity to present a counter and discuss the proposal that they have. Now, what I do want to make clear to everybody is, while we can discuss a counter or make proposals, we want to make proposals as a group or unit. So for instance, if an individual says, well, I want to manage 20 people and I'm only managing 15, well, does that make sense for the organization? If it does, great, we'll make that proposal, but we don't necessarily want to make, I don't want to say selfish proposals, but individual proposals. I'll answer your second question and then I'll move on to what Mayela is just talking about. Your second comment was, wait, what was your second question, Yasmina? Sorry.
My second question was about, oh, I can't remember.
So yes, we will be able to make.
Does somebody remember what my question?
Yeah, Yasmina, I think you said that you wanted to see a second proposal.
Oh yes.
Second, a runner-up org chart or reorg.
Oh,
Yes.
if the VSIP replacements fail.
Correct. Correct.
Yes.
Yes, we can
Thank you,
ask
Veronica.
that. We can request that. Management can say we're not doing it. However, we are agreeing to a specific constellation of positions and assignments. So if, for instance, they say, okay, we're going to have, I'm making this up, we're going to have an SSPM2, a program manager 1, and 2 MAs in this, management analysts in this group. And that's based on their swap going through. And then it turns out that we end up having a program without a PM attached to it. Well, that's not what we agreed to. So now we'd have to rediscuss how that work gets handled. But I'm noting that down. This, I'm going to say county proposals, SCCO proposals, if replacements fail. And we touched on that a little bit in the past, and they didn't seem too interested in that. I also want to cover that with this proposal specifically about the meet and confers over the DFCS reorg, there will be an email coming out, a survey rather, coming out shortly. Here's the rub. There are people in DFCS who, if there are assignment changes, want to rebid everything, and there are people who don't. And then there's a, well, what happens if things get rebid and it's not even impacted by the reorg? So there are some nuances there that I need to figure out what it is that the membership wants, and crafting that survey has been challenging. but do expect a survey on that, so that at least I know what position SEMA wants to take, and it's not just based on what I feel like or something that happened while I was driving into work or something.
So Zeb, to follow up with respect to the bid, so when we, if we were to take a vote on, say, how many of us want to pursue the bid process and how many of us don't want to, would you break it up by SSPM 1, SSPM 2, SSPM 3 so that the 3s don't get to vote for the 2s and the 2s don't get to vote for the 3s or the 1s? And I'm just wondering.
No, I would not get to that granular level of detail, because this is something that would impact everybody, right? So if the 3s all have to rebid and the 2s all have to rebid and the management analysts have to rebid, I'm not going to say, well, do the management analysts want to bid, but the program managers don't. So we're only bidding on we wouldn't get to that level of detail. And bidding in reorgs is not unusual, but it's typically an all or nothing thing, and it probably happens in maybe a quarter of reorgs. Behavioral health just went through a reorg and there was no bid process, as an example. Whereas that SSA, DFCS went through a bid process last time, and everyone was permitted to express their desires. Okay, any other questions on the DFCS reorg before I move to the 360 review, meet and confer? Okay, great. I hope that met a couple of people's needs who said they wanted to hear that first or wanted to lead with SSA specific things. I'm going to move right into 360 review, which is also specific to SSA, as well as the PAGC, which is also specific to SSA. And then we'll hit the unit-wide operations. So the 360 review is a supplemental review. It was originally targeted or is still targeted as a pilot program. Mary Beth Rogers and Robin Rivas, who I think just saw join us, as well as several other people, Robert Sakasa, Jennifer Hubbs, Patricia Sun, have all been participating in this. And what this is it's a proposal on the part of the county to have a 360 review process that would impact, I believe the number is up to 24. Oh, sorry, Mayella, I did not answer your question. Let me finish this thought with the 360 and then I'll return to your question. I apologize for doing this out of order. So foundationally what this is it's an addition to your annual evaluation, and it's designed for you to get feedback from your peers, superiors, and subordinates, and then engage in a coaching process. So SSA is purchasing one-on-one coaching. I believe is it 4 hours, Mary Beth, or anyone who was attending? I think it's 4 hours over 4 months, 1 hour a month.
That sounds right.
Okay, thank you. So that you would be, if you choose to volunteer and participate, you would be able to receive this coaching and mentoring. So it's really developing your leadership skills. This would be confidential and would not be shared with your boss unless you chose it to be. Is that grammatically correct? Well, whatever. Unless you choose for it to be shared. But it's hopefully valuable for you. The state of play right now is that, as I mentioned, it's voluntary and confidential. The latest proposal from the county involves 12 people who would get it and participate in the coaching. And then they've expanded it to an additional 12 people if there's that much interest, where they would be able to participate and get the feedback, but would not have the coaching piece. So they just see how they're ranked and doing, as it were. Why don't I pause for a moment there and let the others who were at that meeting share some of their thoughts about it. Robert, Mary Beth, Patricia, anyone else?
One of the concerns that I had for the group that might be interested in participating but wouldn't receive the coaching is that it does kind of leave those folks hanging with a whole lot of information about how other people feel about them, and kind of not necessarily any tools to move forward with that information. And so, you know, my ask, and we don't know if they're going to come back with anything or not, but my ask was that they provide some tools that folks could access online or in some other manner that may help with those folks who aren't then getting the coaching, so that they're getting some kind of in-person coaching, but they would still be getting some kind of support and tools to use in order to process and utilize that information successfully.
Yes, that's correct. And something else that at least I felt was a key point, I don't know if others at the meeting agreed, was that the county, it's a pilot program. So the county agreed to evaluate it after it was completed. Now, they didn't say how they would evaluate it. So to me, that's really critical. If you want to understand if a program is successful, you have to set out whatever your measurements tools are going to be before you launch the program. Otherwise, you can just say, well, we wanted 12 people to participate, 12 people did, it's a success. Well, okay, I'm not convinced, right? You need to have some kind of very clear and agreed upon metric as to what constitutes success of the program, in my view. Something else I want to alert everyone to is originally this was going to be geared towards managers, which it still is. It's still geared largely towards managers. Some of us, I think Mary Beth, myself, brought up, well, what about individual contributors? It seems like this might preclude a management analyst or an accountant or something that's not, or an IT person that's not necessarily supervising other staff. They might be leading staff in a project or something, but they're not supervising staff. What about them? And that's where the expansion came, so that it would be 12 people with the coaching and 12 people without the coaching. But to Mary Beth's point, well, what do you do if you get all this information and it's like, hey, people really think that you're an expert at this topic, but you're not sharing that knowledge with other people? Well, okay, I'd love to share that knowledge. What do I need to do that, aside from being aware of it, right? So getting those tools is important as well.
And Zeb, in
yeah,
the way that this was written, it's because they're expanding it, right? So now it's going to be a group of folks that will be randomly selected to go with the coaching component, and then another group of folks that will not get the coaching opportunity. Basically, what I understood that to be is there's just not enough money to send everybody to coaching. But a concern I have with regard to the coaching, I think that people that are going to want to participate in this pilot should have the opportunity to convey their interest in whether they want to be a part of it as a coaching or not behind the scenes. So they go into it knowing, okay, I'd like to participate in the pilot, but only if I'm going to get the coaching component. And but another concern that I have with regard to the whole coaching situation is this is going to be done via UC something or other, right? One of the UC, I forget which one it was.
Davis, UC Davis.
So UC Davis. So you would be meeting one-on-one with these individuals for the next 4 months to kind of go over the results. But how in-depth are these coaching opportunities? Do they really know our business? Our world is very different than many other places. So, what's the bang for the buck with regard to that? And I also don't want us to forget that the county already has a mechanism, the performance appraisal process. This is not in lieu of, this is in addition to. So we will conceivably, if this pilot is deemed to be a success and it's rolled out en masse, then we're going to be in a situation where we're doing our yearly performance evaluations. And on top of that, we're going to be doing these 360 reviews. And I think that, just my opinion, I think that we need to be able to, if this becomes the law of the land, I think that we need to be able to select which route or path we want to go in a particular year. So instead of doing both a performance evaluation and a 360 review It's one or the other. And I also find it curious that our executive leaders are not including themselves in this 360 review. And I did participate in the last time they did this pilot some years ago, and my director was somebody that took the 360 and was a part of the process. And I think that went a long way in getting the support for that from the folks that ended up participating in that. I don't know what came out of that pilot because I took it, I did it, and it ended. So it never turned into a yearly gig or so there were no results that came out of that made it more permanent. So this is kind of interesting to me where they're at now. And then, of course, this is on the heels of a global pandemic. From my personal opinion, why now? But anyway, so those are just my thoughts.
And I think those are all great thoughts, Robert. I appreciate you participating in the meeting as someone who's been around the management circles of the county for a long period of time. I think your input and everyone else's input very helpful in it. To be clear to everybody, this is voluntary. So if you don't want to participate, you don't have to. I think that suggestion's excellent. Can I get the coaching? If not, I'm not interested in participating. I think that's a good toggle to have. And then if this is a success and the SEMA members like it and the county likes it, going forward, it becomes a new negotiation. Is this a replacement for the evaluation or not? If it is a replacement for the SEMA evaluation, which is, we're getting ahead of anything right now. If it is a replacement, then that confidentiality piece falls away, right? Because the point of the SEMA 360 of the SEMA evaluation that's enshrined in our contract is you have a conversation with your boss, they have a conversation with you, you cover areas of improvement, areas of excellence, and that's memorialized as part of your development plan. If you can't do that with your boss, then and there's no visibility, it takes away a key component of the 360 from my perspective. But anyhow, any other thoughts on that, folks who were at the meeting, or questions from everyone in the group? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to return to Mayella's question. I apologize, Mayella. It was sent out last week, and it was sent out to everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include that as well in chat. So what you're going to see from me in chat, you're going to see a lot of things as soon as I stop talking and Adam starts in a second here. You're going to see the latest meet and confer from the DFCS Reorg, applicable to 10 people on this call. You're going to see the 360 latest documentation from the county, possibly applicable to everybody on this call, possibly, if you want to participate or not. And then you're going to see the job spec changes, which I'm about to roll into for PAGC, which applies to very few people on this call. So let me roll into that. PAGC is undergoing job spec changes specifically for the supervising estate administrator spec. If there's anyone that's in that, please ask a question now. If you are in that spec, you already have received this information. So go check your junk mailbox if you haven't seen it yet, or your spam folder. That was sent out 2 weeks ago with the changes. And I said, do we need to meet and confer with the county? I didn't hear back. It's a very few people. There are only 3 or 4 people in that spec. So I requested a meet and confer that's happening next Tuesday at 2. Tuesday at 2. If you're a supervising estate administrator, please be there. I will be posting those details in chat as well. Is there anyone on the call that is a supervising estate administrator or works in PAGC that has any questions about this? Okay, not seeing anything. Mayella, did I answer your question? And I will be posting some things in chat in just a moment. Mayella, you can unmute yourself or post in chat.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Adam, can you go ahead and take over while I get this flurry of posts on for the vaccine updates and budgetary outlook, please?
Yeah, sure thing. So general updates on the vaccine. I think folks who have been following the news the last few weeks, last month will have seen it, which is that Santa Clara is seeing a lower vaccine allocation than they had seen previously. SEMA has been asked to be involved and has been involved a little bit in this over the last month or so, as far as involving our lobbyists through OE3 in Sacramento. We may have spoken about this at the previous SSA site meeting, but in lobbying meetings with our Board of Supervisors a little over a month ago, concern at that time was that Santa Clara had this great capacity built out for vaccine delivery, tens of thousands of doses a day turnaround time, but that the supply Santa Clara was receiving didn't match that available throughput. When other counties were receiving vaccine, they weren't able to get shots into arms in line with the dose they were receiving. So that's something that was the issue circa a month ago. Since then, one of the major changes has been kind of the equity redistribution. Folks have likely seen in the news, Santa Clara is receiving a fairly small portion of those doses set aside for equity purposes that are supposed to be going to the hardest hit counties. That's been something that local politicians here in the Bay Area, our state assemblymen, have been trying to haggle with Sacramento, with Newsom over. There's been some indication over the last couple of days in the news that may be, we'll be receiving, I believe, our next vaccine dosage numbers today. And that number may be shifting up, but we'll see what some of that impact has been, right? Is that in line with the lower number of dosages that we're receiving, we've seen a number of DSWs returned who were deployed to assist with vaccination, as they're just not needed to handle the level of vaccine dose that we're actually getting. And then secondarily, it means also a slower rollout for those folks in the county who have those county employees who have not yet been vaccinated, right? Fairly small portion now are going to be able to get vaccinated with their first dose on a weekly basis. The ones set aside for county employees are right now not doing much more than just covering second doses for county employees who have already covered, and then of course covering first doses for those folks who might be getting newly hired on in those kind of frontline clinical settings. So the update, basically just to say this is something that we've tasked our lobbyists with through OE3 in Sacramento to say, look, Santa Clara has greater capacity, needs greater vaccine doses, and there's a lot of good that can be being done here with that right now. And that secondarily, there is this slowdown that's going to affect not just county residents, but also county staff, and to share the county's still, I think from our mind, going to be appropriately prioritizing. There will be enough to continue to vaccinate folks. Everyone's going to be getting their second dose who's a county employee, and there will continue to be first doses available for new frontline healthcare workers. But otherwise, unfortunately, unless numbers improve in the coming weeks as far as number of doses, things will be a little slower than we have been seeing them thus far. Second thing we had on here was a review of the budgetary outlook. So not much has changed here in the last couple months. I think we can continue to say that, we can reasonably expect what the rest of this fiscal year is going to look like, and that we're definitely in a better position now than we were anticipating being 6 months ago, looking forward to this point in time. For anyone who is a little bit behind on where we're at and why we're kind of saying that we're in a better place now, the last couple months worth of site meetings, I think will give you that are posted up on SEMA's YouTube page, will give a fairly good summary of why we're saying we're in a better spot now. The major news in the last month, right, is that the feds have passed the $1.9 trillion new relief bill. From that, there's a little more than 300 billion set aside for state and local aid. The preliminary numbers that we've heard so far, I think, is that Santa Clara County might expect something on the order of 320 million from that. So obviously that's great news. I doubt any of us got those $2,000 checks we were promised during the election, but we'll have to make our peace with that, I guess. and that this is still going to be a significant benefit for Santa Clara. How that money is going to be earmarked for specific use yet, I'm not sure, and where it's going to be apportioned, I'm not sure yet. But I think that's definitely good news for the coming fiscal year. As we've said, it's a little bit hard to imagine what things are going to look like or guess what things are going to look like past July of next year. We've stated confidently there's not going to be any layoffs, anybody walking out the door the rest of this fiscal year. It's a little bit harder to say next year. There's some big question marks out there that have major impact on the county's budget. Major things like, are we going to see improved, revenue in health and hospital? Are they going to get patient volumes back up to where they were pre-COVID? That's a big outstanding question mark right now. But this, the state and local aid will definitely help that. So that's kind of the change we've seen in the last month there. And for anyone would like kind of a more thorough accounting, like I said, of where we got to where we are now, the last couple months worth of site meetings give a pretty good accounting of that. Next item that we have on here is a brief discussion of the South Bay Labor Council. So we have some good news here. Folks may remember that the SEMA president, Dolores Morales, was elected to the South Bay Labor Council last year. And she was just elected to a general board position, not a named position such as president or vice president or something like that. This was a big and important step for SEMA. We'd never previously, or at least not to my understanding, any point recently had representation on the South Bay Labor Council. For anyone who's not familiar with it, the South Bay Labor Council is it's a group comprised of all the unions in the South Bay. And they're important for a number of reasons. One, they have unions coming together have significantly more political power than they do separate. And one of the things the South Bay Labor Council does is make kind of labor unit wide determinations on what candidates in our local elections are going to be labor endorsed or not. So for example, SEMA has its own PAC committee, right? They've been meeting recently and looking ahead at the elections to come over the next year or two as seats start to turn over. And SEMA's PAC conducts its own, interviews with local candidates and makes determinations about who we'd like to support. But we don't make any announcements on those issues until the South Bay Labor Council has undergone that same process, with us as members and other unions as members, to make an overall determination about who labor is going to be supporting. And towards that end, it's definitely helpful for us to have, and it's beneficial for SEMA to have representation there on the South Bay Labor Council. The good news is that as of the last month, there was another election, and Dolores has been reelected, and this time she's was elected to the Sergeant at Arms position, which is one of the named positions on the South Bay Labor Council, has responsibility for enforcing rules of order during discussions, those kind of things. So some additional responsibility on there. As were a couple of folks from OE3 as well, who were running. So generally a good night for SEMA at the South Bay Labor Council elections. Some of your members there and your PAC committee members were all there and supported Dolores, and she spoke well and got herself elected again. So we're definitely happy to see that. Anything you'd want to add on any of those couple topics I just hit there, Zeb, before I keep moving forward, or any questions from any of the members here on the call before we continue to move through the agenda?
I would just want to add, because I know some of our members are very politically involved and some are not. The South Bay Labor Council, as a reminder, is a consortium of labor unions in the South Bay, and we all band together to back different political initiatives or organize in terms of contract fights or help fellow union organizations out. So the more sway we have in the SBLC, South Bay Labor Council, the more seriously we're taken by other unions and also by electeds. So it is a way for us to magnify our power within the labor community. So that's why it's so key that our president is an officer of that unit.
This next item here is something that we are looking for feedback from members here. This is the first time that Zeb and I are discussing this next item with any of the membership. And we're kind of noodling around whether this is something that would be beneficial or not. And we definitely like feedback from folks in this call before we make any kind of further decisions on this. So what this item is it's called Navigating Equal Opportunity on here. Something that Zeb and I have seen over the last few months, I would say, has been a significant uptick in the number of SEAM members that we have being called in for equal employment opportunity investigations. So for anyone who's not familiar with this department or not familiar with what they do, first off, good for you. Hopefully it stays that way. And secondarily, I'll give a quick explanation of what it is. So the Equal Employment Opportunity Department was created ostensibly to be kind of a semi-independent functioning investigatory body within Santa Clara County that has the specific charge of investigating issues that have some nexus in discrimination based on a protected category, something that the EEOC would care about. So EEOC, right, is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That's the state body that investigates issues that fall under those same rubric, right? Discrimination based on protected category. And I think from my perspective, there were a couple intents and ideas behind the creation of the EOD department. One is that they function as kind of an internal mechanism to catch issues before they leave the county's purview, right? And someone goes and files with the EEOC or files a lawsuit, right, against the county. So it's an internal catch to try to keep things in the county's purview and resolve any issues before they go outside the county's control, right? And then secondarily, it's a department that's dedicated towards, identifying and rooting out and stopping any discriminatory practices where they may exist within the county. And that's a priority for a number of our elected officials, right? Having a fair and equitable workplace. And that's part of the department's charge as well. That being said, we've had a number of kind of gripes as SEMA, the institution, with the Equal Opportunity Department and their function, which has undergone some, I would say, kind of concept and mission creep over the last, over recent years. And whether it's directly as a result of that, or it's that, people are filing more, EOD complaints because of the general stress that everyone's under during COVID and the lockdown. I'm not sure what exactly the origin is, but the end result is that it's not uncommon for at least me to have a week now where I'm in 3 or 4 of these investigations in a given week with SEMA folks who are getting called in. And I know, Zeb's had similar weeks. Sometimes we'll have one a week and sometimes we'll have significantly more, right? And I would just share as someone who sits with a lot of members through this process, it's an extremely stressful process for folks to get, a notice in their email. You've been accused of discriminatory behavior, you're being accused of being, ageist, racist, of harassing your employees, whatever it may be. It's often extremely discomforting and concerning for folks who've never been through this process before. So we're, it's been a few months now since we've done kind of a SEMA-wide training. I think the last ones we did were kind of around the classification study process as that was getting forward. But given kind of how many folks this is impacting now, we're considering putting forward kind of a, I don't know, what to expect when you're expecting, maybe kind of like that, when you've received notice of an EOD complaint, something like that, right? An explanation from SEMA's perspective on the process, as well as, perhaps maybe just some best practices about what works well in kind of management of a department or of staff to make sure that you don't end up with an EOD complaint in the first place, right? Yeah, so we're interested in hearing any feedback from folks who may have been kind of impacted by this process. For folks who have not been, is this something you're concerned about? Do you think you'd see a benefit from, SEMA putting out a training like this, maybe putting it up on YouTube, something like that? And any other thoughts on kind of these issues? So feel free to put something in chat or unmute yourself. I think we still have fewer than 40 people. While folks are thinking, anything you'd want to add on to that explanations of?
Yeah, so, I want to be crystal clear. SEMA, of course, opposes any kind of discrimination, retaliation, preference based on a group affiliation in the workplace or really anywhere, right?
Yep.
So full stop. What
Yep.
what this discussion is designed for is, what can you still do as a colleague, as a manager, as a supervisor, if someone you're managing or supervising, or if someone who manages or supervises you has filed a complaint. And oftentimes people get so scared by the fact that there is an EO complaint in process that they can't do or continue to conduct normal business, right? If Joe is coming in late and you're saying, hey, if they're an hourly worker, right? Hey, you're coming in late, I'm concerned about this. And then they file an EO complaint, that doesn't mean that you can't be concerned about them coming in late, right? That's still a very clear thing that needs to continue with the business operations of the unit. But then also, what do you do if there is someone who's abusing the process, right? And that can be challenging as well. And you know, this is a recorded meeting. I've been on record saying this. Unfortunately, some people on the call have experienced what I call the trifecta, which is there's an ill-intentioned individual who's being asked to do something that they don't want to do. So what do? They go out on stress leave, they file a grievance, they file an EO complaint, right? To try to muddy the waters because I'm coming in late and I don't like being told that I'm coming in late.
Mhm.
That's an ill-intentioned use of the process. Very clearly, you could have a legitimate use of the process where I truly am being retaliated against and I'm filing all those things. But what do we do when it's ill-intentioned, and how is it that we can thread that needle, right? So that's a little bit of what the training might be about. I see a comment that the training would be helpful. Thank you. And recorded later for people who can't attend. And then the other piece too is just informational. For those of you that have never been through either as a witness or as a respondent or a complainant, what do those terms even mean, right? For the EO process, this can also be informative to you. And then to follow on to what Adam said, an issue that we've been having in terms of scope creep very specifically with EO is them just opining on things that don't have anything to do with an EO finding. So if our buddy Hank over here is being accused of violating some EO policy, the fact that Hank's subordinates think that Hank stinks at filling out his TPS reports shouldn't make its way to the executive as a result of that finding. EO's focus should be narrow, right? Did Hank violate any EO policies? Did he engage in retaliation? Did he engage in discrimination? That should be the focus. Whether or not he stinks at filling out his TPS reports is a separate issue. If for some reason EO discovers something as part of an EO investigation that could result in separate discipline or corrective action for Hank, then that needs to be a separate investigation. Okay, Mary Beth Rogers is just letting us know that Jeff just sent out an SSA 360. Good, that was one of the times discussed. So thank you, Mary Beth, for that. And that serves as a notice for people who are on this for the 360. Oh, and I do want to make this point because this is an important one. We have SEMA members who work at EO, right? This is not their fault. They're being directed to do this for whatever reason from senior leadership. So, you know, if you're being told, here's what you need to have an opinion on, then that's how you're trained and directed to fill out those reports. So I want to make that clear too. This is not just like a few rogue EO officers, you know, dreaming up something to do with their spare time. This is a direction that the department has taken. Okay, I don't see any questions on this, so let's go ahead and move on to COVID compliance. I think, Adam, you have some information about this as well. I'm going to post in breaks in chat. As you, I don't know if you guys saw late yesterday, it was announced that today we are moving into, I can't remember what tier, some color that's a better tier. We're in a better tier. I think we're orange.
Orange, we're orange, yes.
Thank you, Robin. I think it's orange. So I think it's like magenta, red, and then a stoplight. Red, orange, green. Is that correct? anyway, we're in a better tier. And so I'm going to be posting what that means in a second. I can't post the whole thing because chat limits it, but it means that the same regulations are still in place. Stay outdoors, stay masked, maintain the 6-foot distance, but indoor dining's up to 50%. Retail stores are fully open with modifications. Gyms, this is good news for some of the fitness fans out there, are up to 25% capacity. Indoor pools are reopening. Movie theaters are at 50% capacity now, and family entertainment centers are at 25%. And for those who were going to zoos, museums, and aquariums, they're at 50% capacity as well. So we're moving into a different tier. The other news on this, and Adam looked confused when I was saying he might have information on this topic. The other item I wanted to cover was the facilities manager piece of this, which has been a countywide concern, but mostly from SSA. Every worksite has a facility manager that's assigned. In some cases, it's people that are expert at what I'm about to go over, and in other cases, it's not. You could be an SSPM that's just said, guess what? You're the facility manager. You're a senior MA. You're the facility manager of some remote location. And the challenge with that is our folks have been asked to be knowledgeable about things that they just aren't. So I'll read from this checklist that this was sent out to anyone who is decided was a facility manager. Here's some silly thing that you're supposed to do. You are supposed to improve air quality by verifying the air handler outside and the air dampeners are open and economizers are functional. You're supposed to have a minimum outside air dampener positions that should be in place for the most effective range. And you need to verify that the balancing systems for outside air and exhaust are to specified norms. So this is just something that like a management analyst or SSPM that's in charge of a clinic is not going to know any of these things. A clinic for you, Adam, a remote work site, you're over at Center Road and you're in charge of what, you're like, I don't know anything about HVAC. I know that the air conditioning's on, right? So things that we can do and are reasonable. Hey, are your folks 6 feet apart? Are they wearing a mask? Do they report that they have a temperature? So those things we had a great meeting and some wonderful suggestions from SEMA members were made. Here's what were made. We had a brief call with Miguel Marquez and he confirmed that the county is going to do these things. So we're seeing fruit bear from these concerns. One, the county is going to be producing a webinar to train people about the COVID-19 protocol so that individual managers aren't having their own training that might be different, right? So that way there's some uniformity. Two, county, we need to have some kind of an inspector doing these things that I just mentioned, right? You as a facility manager, if you're a management analyst, program manager, SSPM, you're not going to know how HVAC works. You're not going to be able to just look around a work site and say there ought to be no more than 20 people in this space. I know you can put the numbers into a space calculator and try to figure it out. You can do the 6 feet apart. So they're identifying an FAF who you can contact. I don't know, Robin. I know you're working with and some other people on the call are probably working with Steve Fontecaro about how to do this as well. So in addition to FAF, you might be able to help people out. And then lastly, this idea I like, they're working with TSS, they meaning county administration is working with TSS to develop a daily self-certification app. You may have experienced this if you've gone to a gym or some kind of public place where you just say, I don't have a temperature. I haven't been in contact with anyone that I know has COVID in the last 7 days. No, I didn't just return from a trip to Greenland, right? And so like those kinds of certifications that you're doing daily, so that way it takes some of that burden off of the managers in those facilities. So this is an issue that's affecting a narrow band of SSA SEMA managers, but it's very important for those that are being impacted. Are there any questions or comments on that?
I'll just share this. This kind of generally aligns with the county shift outsourcing, for example, at our hospitals and clinics. For folks who have been there during COVID, you'll know that you walk in the front door, have your temperature scanned, get a little sticker for your badge, and then go about your way. that's being stopped in the near future. I think they still have to go through SEIU with that. Maybe SEMA's already, okayed that change. And that, yeah, just the general shift to employees can monitor their own symptoms, report to their managers if that's becoming, if they have symptoms, and then we can take appropriate steps from there. So I would say, to Zeb's point, I think this just falls under the continuing rubric of things slowly transitioning back to maybe what you could imagine as normal, but there's going to be a lot of steps on that before we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if I've not seen any questions on that, so I'm just going to move on. I know we've had a lot of information here. One point that didn't make it to the agenda, but that I just want to alert folks to, is that we are working with a vendor to sync all of our media. And I think that that's going to lead to a much better experience for you all with regards to our website, our Facebook page, which has frankly just been dormant for, at what, we probably have a post every 2 or 3 months. So the website, the Facebook page will be much cleaner and easier. And also the content generation will be there for our app as well, which you may not know. We subscribe to that hosts our website. It's called Union Active. And what this allows us to do is not only host the website, but it gives us access to an app. So we can say, here's your local officials. Many of us don't know, unfortunately, who our Harbor District representative is, or who are many of us, and I'm ashamed to say this, a lot of people at SEMA don't know who your board of supervisor is, right? So it's like, oh, I want to vote for Susan. Is she in my district? So this way you can hop on and look and see who's there. And that's something that is so important to many unions that we don't need to develop anything for this. We buy into that app as part of our subscription to Union Active, and it's provided. So getting that off the ground and running it customized for SEMA is really important. And as I mentioned, that content generation, all of our committees generate content. The e-blast is content. This meeting is going to be uploaded as soon as this meeting is done. Making sure that that's replicated on the website, on the Facebook page, so that it's pushed and it's fresh for you all, that's really important. That the calendar is updated on the page so that you can go there and say, for example, this meeting tomorrow. Okay, we've got a meeting tomorrow. What's the Zoom information? I'm hopping on the calendar to look at that. To make the experience better, the content that we're generating pushed and more universal and accessible and documented. So that's our goal with that. I see a couple of questions. One is direct. Can you answer the generic one, Adam, while I read this private one?
Sure. Sorry, that seems to be an SS about the webinar training. That seems to be specific to SS. I'm not sure I can answer that one.
Okay. I just read the other one. Okay. Yeah. So this is a reminder from an individual that all SSA offices have had a special air filter installed since COVID started. That's great. And this person's reminding everyone to abide by the social distancing. And this is good information. Please contact Paul Tran in central services, if you need any PPE or personal protective equipment. Thank you for that reminder. Teresa is asking for the forms that we were to sign and submit. Those are on hold until we have a webinar training. Yes. So if you are uncomfortable signing the form, you do not have to. You can say, and I talked to Miguel about this, you can say, hey, look, I haven't been trained on this. I don't want to sign the form. That's okay. The county is being pressured to get people to sign the form. Who are they being pressured by? They're being pressured by the feds and the state. And we really should have had all these forms signed in November, but it's not a reasonable ask, right, of someone who's not an expert. So Teresa, to your question, if you are not comfortable signing the form, alert your manager, copy me, and this would apply to you in your areas too, Adam. If you have staff, people who have received this form, don't know what it is, don't feel qualified, feel free to say, I'm not comfortable until I have the training. I'm not going to sign it, and we'll support you in that.
Mhm.
Okay. I hope that answered your question, Teresa. If there's any pending questions, please let us know. Otherwise, you get 3 minutes of your life back. I'll pause for a moment, and I will, while I'm pausing, actually, I'm not going to post it right now. You can go to our YouTube page, and any of our videos that we've posted are going to be there. And that's also part of this social media push. Whenever we publish a new video like today, that would be announced. And you'll see it right away. You're not going to need the specific link. You can just go to our YouTube page. I will post that right now in chat. Otherwise, I think that's it. Do you have anything else to add, Adam?
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to look. Here is I'm going to post the SEMA webpage right now. Otherwise, if you don't want to stick around for that, thank you so much for attending. And yeah, really appreciate it.
Yeah, take care, folks. Stay safe.
You too.
Thank you. Goodbye.
All right, folks, for those that are still there, I'm copying a specific video. You can just go to that and link to the SEMA page and look at any of the
Okay,
pages.
good morning, everybody. Good morning.
All right, thanks so much. Bye.